Thanking the press for coming out today for this event. The purpose of this press conference is we're calling for the commissioner of the Department of Corrections. We're calling for the Governor Ned Lamont, the Department of Health to look into the conditions of Osborne Correctional and all the other facilities across the state. And the reason why we're making this request publicly is because people behind the walls and their families have consistently told us about the conditions that they're forced to live in. And we haven't, and since COVID, these conditions and what people have been living with behind the walls have been highlighted. And one of the most notorious jails for the conditions being in a horrible situation is Osborne Correctional. So from people behind the walls writing and connecting with us and telling us about what they're experiencing, this is the result of this press conference. During this press conference, we're going to have people, you're going to hear from people that have personally been affected behind the wall. You're going to hear from family members that have been affected and doing the time with their loved ones behind the wall. And you're also going to hear an account from people that wrote letters and they wanted their experiences told to the public and the masses. So that's synopsis of what this press conference is going to consist of. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start the press conference with a letter that we read to Ned Lamont and to all elected officials in the department. So we write this letter with extreme urgency. We write to express our collective concern as people presently living in Connecticut prisons, their family members and loved ones, medical professionals and community members from across the state. And we write to make a life-saving request for our community members. For years, we have lived and known the horror of the living conditions in prisons across Connecticut. Because of the COVID-19 pandemic, these truths become more public as more people behind the walls found their lives and their well-beings threatened or forced to live in fear of becoming sick and dying. We started to witness 18-month sentences turn into death sentences. And that's just a reality. You know, we've been being with people and we've been working with people that didn't have a life sentence. They had 5 years, 18 months, but because of the conditions they were living in mixed with COVID, they ended up dying in those facilities behind us. So we're making a plea right now to all elected officials, the health department, the wardens, and everybody to look into this and to close that facility down. Because of the urgency, carelessness, and basic disregard for people's lives behind the wall, we had to watch helplessly as people lost their lives, as our loved ones inside became sick and were denied access to care and the opportunity to even let their families know they had contracted a potentially life-threatening virus. And even when our loved ones passed, we were not given the decency of honesty and full account of why. People incarcerated in Connecticut are still dying from COVID-19. To date, 21 inmates have died while in the DOC custody. COVID-19 positivity rates among our incarcerated loved ones are still on the rise despite the vaccine. Currently, facilities with the highest COVID-19 positivity rates are New Haven Correctional, McDougall Correctional, Hartford Correctional, and Osborne Correctional. People in every facility in the state of Connecticut have reported horror stories of violence and neglect, but the worst and most inhumane living conditions that have been reported come from the Osborne Correctional Facility. Osborne was built in 1963 and has since become one of the state's biggest prisons. In more than 60 years, it has been impossible to make upgrades because of the number of people in the facility that has the highest and is the highest throughout the decades. We understand that the state has monetary reasons for keeping the facility open. Osborne is one of the state's leading facilities in producing goods made by inmates for pennies on a dollar. The state and the Department of Correction have benefited financially from how many people they can warehouse in Osborne and how much money they can make from exploiting the labor of people inside. There are multiple intersex epidemics in Osborne that threaten daily the lives of people inside and have for decades. The plumbing has been an issue in Osborne. huge issue. The plumbing have been a huge issue. The drinking water have been a huge issue. You know, they tell people in Osborne when they tell the COs to bring their own drinking water because the water is unsafe. And they also tell the people behind the walls, once they press the handle and get water into the cup, and let the cup sit so the things that's in the water can settle. This is a normal practice in Osborne. Underscoring the cause made by those incarcerated in Osborne, we are requested that the state close Osborne Correctional and that a full investigation and tour be conducted in the facilities across the state by the health department. We're asking that the health department look into what's happening in Osborne and in other facilities across the state. We're asking that the Department of Corrections and the governor, they look into closing Osborne. We just got a huge infrastructure bill from President Biden. And this infrastructure, one of the things that was pointed out, they had a press conference Monday, Senator Blumenthal and a couple of other state reps, they had a press conference Monday, and they spoke about how these old pipes, how they're infecting the water of people across the state, and how they wanted to change these pipings and whatnot. Osborne was built in 1963. Asbestos and everything that we spoke about is in that water. People have been forced to live behind those walls and in those conditions for decades now. It's time as a community that we do something about it. And the first thing we can do about it is addressing what's happening in Osborne and closing Osborne facility. So what I want to do at this point is I wanted to introduce somebody that was living in Osborne and could tell us firsthand what they had to experience in Osborne, and his name is Sean. And I would like to invite Sean to speak.
My name is Sean. I was in Osborne in 2006 and 2009. And when I first got to Osborne, I was a D-block. Excuse me if you can't understand me. I went to D-block, and my first time pouring a cup of water, it came out white. So I asked my son, I'm like, what is this? And he said, I let it sit. So I let it sit, and I poured it out, but the residue was still around the ring. So I had to take the water, let it settle, and then boil it, then let it settle some more, and then drink. So I was going like 4 to 5 hours without drinking nothing. So the water I made out of my stinger was right. And when I could take showers, the water messed up my back. So when I went home, I had to go to a specialist to get my back straight and get some type of ointment. Because the water made my back and my skin, and it stayed at my skin. So I'm gonna fast forward it up. I used to get these headaches while they're on the floor, and I didn't make the headaches well. But I never really said nothing. And then they took me to Enfield, the headaches increased. And when I got home, I had a toothache. And then the toothache led to me getting a tooth call to discovering that went up and ate up my jawbone. And from there I had to get reconstructive surgery because the tumor in my neck was cancerous. And yeah, that Osborne, being in these prisons in this area, like messed me up. And I slowly believed that the water, because I didn't get into no altercations, I didn't really have no issues in there where my bone would be eroded. I never did drugs, I don't drink. The type of cancer I have come from people that smoke, shoot heroin, smoke cocaine. I've never did none of that. But the water inside of there, just like many other men that came home, some died from cancer. I won't name their names because I think they respect. But a lot of men that's a serious health issue. And the medical side there, they only give you a moxa. So you can be on the verge of a heart attack. They give you a moxa until you lay down for a couple of days. But with me having the knee reconstruction surgery, the water playing that part in there. The water, because it's disgusting. So we never drink it. If you go to Osborne Shift Change, just look at the COs. Every last one is bring their own water. I don't even think they wash their hands with that water. So that water is so degraded to the human body. And something needs to be done about that sewer system in there, because there's a lot of men in there and that's suffering and not really saying that.
Next, we're going to hear Vicky talk to us about her family's experience.
Hello everyone, and thank you for giving me this time, allowing me to come forth and speak on behalf of my son, to be able to know what he's going through, and thank you for your support. This is what my son says. In my 19 years of incarceration, I've never encountered a place like Osborne Correctional Institute. The outdated facility is equipped to house people. Despite mouse and rodent infestation in the kitchen and in the commissary, the presence of asbestos and lead paint in the windows, frames, and multiple confirmed contaminants such as lead, arsenic, and Legionnaires' bacteria in the water systems and drinking water. This place is allowed to operate with complete autonomy and lack of oversight. Staff are instructed not to drink the water and are provided bottled water while we are told the water is safe for consumption. I've been repeatedly assured that it's okay if you boil it first. They shouldn't have to. Other people incarcerated here in the 1980s have shared that back then they were already being told there was something wrong with the water and correctional officers were told not to drink the water. Myself recently called the governor's office to inquire about the presence of the Legionnaires' outbreak in Osborne and where measures are being taken. I was directed to call the commissioner. Once I called the commissioner, they called me back, saying they will look into it. At this point, I've heard nothing back. I shouldn't have to. Other people incarcerated here in the 19th have shared back they were already being told that something was wrong with the water. And we're told not to drink the water. Okay, I'm sorry. I lost my place. Who provided the number to the facility? When I called the facility, no one answered. Oh, give me a second. A lack of the third-party oversight allows a culture of indifference to rule this place with its children. My son was rushed out into an emergency because he hurt himself there. He had an accident. He was found moved up with a cracked window and was broken and lost his steel screen. I tried to tell him that the old plate of glass broke and caught him severely. He was rushed to the hospital. Imagine his surprise when he was told, "You have to be careful, those windows are old. You won't believe how quickly this happens in here. The windows have been asbestos and framed. They shouldn't have to be fixed with me in there because my window was broken and they emptied out the entire unit for 2 hours while they fixed the window because of the asbestos. This place was built with standards that are now acquitted and dangerous. Suffice is to say, Osborne is a health and safety hazard. It needs to be closed. If not, your tax dollars will continue to be spent on settled lawsuits due to hazardous conditions and making frequent repairs to keep depleted structures barely optional. Hutchinson and other residential institutional structures will have been possessed for a long time. Thank you for your time and support. I know that you guys are going to make the right choice. until resolution to make sure that not only my son, but all inmates will be safe. Thank you for your time.
Next, we'll hear from an inmate. We see the struggles and the pains that our family members and other residents. My name is Michael Lebowitz. I've been incarcerated for 24 years. I've been housed in multiple correctional facilities, and while I've long been a critic of correctional practices and have called for reforms for correctional facilities and to the correctional system, I've never called for a correctional facility to be closed. The reason I do so now is because I believe that this place is so different and so unique that it's simply unsalvageable. The physical structure of this place makes rehabilitation impossible. This jail was opened in the 1960s. At the time, the prison's population was such that each inmate had their own cell. So cells that were originally designed for one person now house two. You've got two people that are put into a closed space together, sharing a bathroom. The doors between the cells have a window, but there's no glass. Sound in my experience, those activities are vital for rehabilitation. If I can't reach and learn, if I can't write out my thoughts, if I can't introspect, and I can't reform myself, it's not possible. When you come out of the cell, there's the showers. There's a small shower room with a closed door. There are 6 showers, 3 on each side. They're about 2.5 feet from each other. So you have 6 guys showering in a small place where there's a risk for communicable diseases. If you spread out the facility in general, 3 times in the last year, my entire unit has moved into another unit. In my previous 23 years in other facilities, I've never seen that happen even once. And here it's happened 3 times in 1 year. We've also got an issue with asbestos. Prior to the pandemic, they were supposed to do asbestos removal. They never did it. Now that things are more relaxed in here, it seems that they have no interest in doing anything. I don't know much about risk with asbestos. I just know that it's not healthy for you. We also have an infestation of mice in here. A friend of mine the other day told me about a mouse being on his bunk. The toilets in here backwash too. So if your neighbor flushes the toilet, often what they flush comes up in your toilet. Anyone should ask themselves, given what I've described, is this environment conducive to the type of work rehabilitation requires? All the other issues I've ever pointed in correctional facilities, corrupt staff, the lack of effective programming, they apply here, if not even more. But on top of that, there's physical structure of this place. Does anybody actually think that this place could be rehabilitative? Osborn needs to be closed down now, and it needs to be closed down as soon as possible. Next, I'm going to read something from a doctor from Yale University. Dr. Tracy Kershaw is a professor and a chair of social and behavioral sciences at the Yale School of Public Health. I write to underscore the horrific conditions of Osborn Correctional and need for the immediate action, including the release of those incarcerated and closing of Osborn Correctional. As a professor of public health, I have dedicated my life to ensure the health and well-being of our communities. I bring over 20 years researching the factors that contribute to poor health and what is needed to create a healthy and just society. The treatment of the individuals in Osborn Correctional Facility, as well as prison facilities across the state, goes against all of the core principles of a healthy and just society. Everything that I have seen and read about Osborn Correctional suggests that it's enduring multiple overlapping and long-standing public health threats that have created inhumane and unjust conditions that demand action. First, the ongoing COVID-19 crisis has unnecessarily put incarcerated individuals at Osborn at increased risk for death and other COVID-19 related issues. The threat of COVID-19 adds to the prevalence of environmental hazards such as asbestos, contaminated water, and the ongoing outbreak of Legionnaires in Osborn. Each of these public health threats would be enough to warrant the closing of Osborn and the release of those that have been incarcerated. But taken together, they result in an unprecedented public health crisis that has been created by neglect. As a public health leader and expert, I implore you to close Osborne in order to achieve health and justice for all. Sincerely, Tracy Kershaw, PhD.
I just wanted to let everybody know that's a representation of the community. The community is stepping forward, talking about their experiences in these different facilities across the state, and most notable, what's happening at Osborne Correctional. I just wanted to reiterate, Osborne Correctional was built in 1963. The plumbing, everything in that facility is out of date, and they're still forcing people to live in these conditions. It's rats, it's all type of rodents that live in that facility. They haven't had time to exterminate because they're constantly warehousing people in this facility. This facility, if it was another building and anywhere else in Connecticut, that building would be condemned. But because it's housing people that are in the facility that's incarcerated, it's okay to keep them in that building. And that's not right. And as a community member, as a family member, as a person that have people that I love that's behind these walls, it's time for us to hold people accountable.
Yes, it is.
And one of the ways that we hold people accountable is by closing the facility.
Yes.
We're people in the community. Our loved ones shouldn't have to live in these conditions, and we should not have to be in fear every day of hearing that our loved ones are going to die or our loved ones are going to get sick. Especially when we know what the root of the problem is. The root of the problem is that facility is out of date in more ways than one, and that building needs to be condemned and closed. So we're pleading, we're asking that the elected officials, that the Department of Health, that the governor of the state, that the commissioner of DLC, that they all start really taking a real look into closing Osborne down. Because people are dying, people are being affected by the conditions in that facility, and they've been affected by it for years. We're just, because of what happened with COVID, it's highlighted the living conditions of what's happening in there. And I just hope that they come to the table to work with us to save the lives of people that are in not only in Osborne, but in all the facilities across the state. Thank you. And I wanted to give this time, if anybody else that is out here, if you wanted to say any words and talk about other experiences of people that they've worked with behind the walls, they have the opportunity right now. If not, I just want to thank the press for coming out and covering this. And this is the first of many that we're going to do to really support the people that are behind the walls and the families. Thank you for coming out, and thank you for supporting our efforts to support the people behind the walls.
Yes.